Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Ayah number 218 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Let us continue بحول الله وقوته. قال الله تعالى إن الذين آمنوا والذين هاجروا وجاهدوا في سبيل الله أولئك يرجون رحمة الله والله غفور رحيم. Okay, so the key words, Iman, we have spoken about. Hajaru, from hajara, to abandon. So the muhajir is the one who abandons that which Allah dislikes. And there are three types of hijrah that one can make. Hijrah from sins, so you abandon sins. Hijrah from evil people, so that you do not remain in the company of people who will influence you in a negative manner. And we have hijrah from a place, so that will be from a place of kufr to a place of Islam, or a place of bid'ah to a place of sunnah. And generally any place of sin, you make hijrah from it, you abandon it. Wajahadu, this means striving, and it is often used to refer to fighting in the way of Allah. He says they are the ones who yarjuna, hope for the rahmah of Allah. Rahmah means kullu khair wa ni'mah, every type of goodness and blessing. So let's pick up on some of the benefits of this ayah. The main one to be picked up on is that hope cannot come without action. Look how Allah Jalla wa Ala mentions Iman, Hijrah and Jihad. And they are the people who hope for the rahmah of Allah. Which means what? If you do not perform any righteous actions, then you cannot hope for the rahmah of Allah. So hope has to be accompanied with actions. Hope without action is mere wishful thinking. And this is what the Christians are well known for. We also take that striving needs to be for Allah Jalla wa Ala alone. So we take from this the importance of ikhlas. We may also take from this ayah that even if you perform righteous actions, you cannot be sure that you will be rewarded. Rather, you can have hope. And this is again where we differ with the Christians. The Christians claim that they know that they are saved merely by being Christians and acknowledging the divinity of Isa alayhi salam. The Muslim does not use the language of certainty. He uses the language of hope. So in other words, we hope for Jannah for a Muslim if he dies upon Islam. But we do not have this hope for the kafir. As for certainty, we have certainty for nobody. That is for Allah alone to decide. Because look how Allah Jalla wa Ala uses the word hope, that these people who perform the righteous actions of Iman and Hijrah and Jihad know that they will have the mercy of Allah. He does not use the word know or certainty. He uses the word hope, and so therefore we use the word hope. However much righteousness you work, you hope that it will be accepted and that you will be rewarded and that your grade will be raised. And this way it is a good thing because it keeps us on our toes, it keeps us humble, and it keeps us from becoming proud of our own works. And it keeps our foot on the pedal so that we do not dwindle and wane in our efforts. We also take that Allah Jalla wa Ala has mercy on His servants. Look at how Allah Jalla wa Ala shows the people the righteous actions by way of the revelation. Then He grants them tawfiq to perform these righteous actions out of His mercy. And then He rewards them at least tenfold for performing the righteous actions. Again, all from His mercy. So how can Allah not be worthy of our love, fear, and hope, and dedication? We also take from this ayah the two names of Allah, Ghafoor and Rahim. Ayah number 219. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ قُلْ فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ وإثمهما أكبر من نفعهما ويسألونك ماذا ينفقون قل العفو كذلك يبين الله لكم الآيات لعلكم تتفكرون. So we have yet another يسألونك ayah. They ask you. This time the people are asking about al-khamr and al-maysir. Okay, so what is al-khamr? Khamr, from khamara, to cover something. So it is that which covers your intellect by way of enjoyment. Commonly nowadays, these are alcoholic beverages, but they do not have to be. Anything which covers your intellect or clouds your intellect by way of enjoyment. So based on this then, anesthetics are not khamr. Even though they would cloud your intellect and knock you out, it is not done by way of enjoyment. As for maysir, notice it has the same root letters as yasir, meaning easy, because maysir, translating to gambling, is a way of making money easily without much toil and trouble. And by gambling, what we mean is when you make money, or any wealth for that matter, dependent on chance, in which you gain at someone else's expense. In a normal trade, both parties gain, but in gambling, one will gain at the other's expense, dependent on chance. So he says, قُلْ, say to them, O Prophet, in them there is ithm kabir, a great sin. But besides that, there are benefits for people as well. But the sin is greater than the benefits. So as for khamr, what could be the benefit of khamr? Well, it could be the enjoyment that one experiences, and it can also be from trade. When you sell khamr, it makes you a big profit. What about maysir? Like we said before, the benefit here is that you have easy money coming your way. And nowadays you may find people even speaking about the benefits of red wine, how it is healthy for your heart. We say, okay, fine, all of these sins do have benefits, but the evil effects, both in this life and in the hereafter, outweigh the benefits. And they ask you about what they should spend, meaning how much. And the answer is قُلْ الْعَفُو. Now afu means excess. That is to say, above and beyond your basic needs. Because of course you have to tend to your own needs first. He then says كَذَلِكَ, like that, meaning to say, just like we have made plain to you the rules and regulations in this ayah, so in this way then Allah makes plain to you His ayat, His signs, لَعَلَّكُمْ, so that in order you may تَتَفَكَّرُونَ. This means to ponder or reflect. And the word fikr is a thought, and fikra is an idea. However, reflect about what exactly? This is given in the next ayah, 220. فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْيَتَامَى قُلْ إِصْلَاحٌ لَهُمْ خَيْرٌ وَإِن تُخَالِطُوهُمْ فَإِخْوَانُكُمْ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ الْمُفْسِدَ مِنَ الْمُصْلِحِ وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَأَعْنَتَكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ, about this dunya, about this world, and the akhirah, the hereafter. So that is to say, you reflect how ephemeral this world is. You reflect on the caducity of the life of this world, and you reflect and bring to mind the eternal nature of the hereafter, and that is your ultimate life. And then he goes on to say, they ask you about the yatama, meaning how should one deal with the orphan under their care. And we spoke about yatama before. The answer is that islah is the way to do things. This is to say, treat the orphans and work with their property in ways which will benefit them the most. So for example, you can invest the property of the orphan if it will make significant returns. And he says, وَإِن تُخَالِطُوهُمْ, from خَلَطَ يَخْلِطُ, to mix. So if you mix with them, this means to say, if you put your personal wealth with their wealth, فَإِخْوَانُكُمْ, then they are your brothers, meaning brothers in your deen. And so from the rights of brotherhood is that you can mix the wealth up as long as it is for the better. There's no problem with that. It's not like they're your enemy that you will keep away from them and keep your wealth away from their wealth. Okay, but what is the reason for this part of the ayah? We find in the tafsir some background. Ibn Abbas says that when ayah 152 of Surah Al-An'am came down, ordering people not to approach the wealth of the orphan except with that which is better, and also ayah number 10 of Surah An-Nisa came down, those who consume the wealth of the orphan are only consuming fire in their bellies. Those people who had orphans under their care became worried and separated their wealth from the wealth of the orphan, because they did not want to consume the orphan's wealth. And if they mixed their wealth with the wealth of the orphan, then they could be unknowingly consuming the wealth of the orphan. So they separated the wealth out. Because of this, when some of the orphan's food and drink remained, they would keep it, store it, until the orphans would eat it. But the problem there is that if a long enough time would pass by, the food would rot. Remember, they had no fridges, no freezers in those days. So this created a bit of a problem for such people. And so they mentioned this to the Prophet, and hence this ayah was revealed to solve their problem. To say that it is not a problem that you mix your wealth with their wealth and treat it like one wealth. And so this is why Allah follows by saying that He knows the mufsid from the muslih. These are two opposite words. So the mufsid, the one who makes fasad, corruption, is the one who's going to spoil the wealth of the orphan and consume it without right. As for the muslih, he is going to do right by the orphan and the orphan's wealth and invest it and increase it. So this is the important point about the orphan's wealth, is that you work to increase it and you save it from destruction and ruin. Note also when he says that Allah knows the mufsid from the muslih, we've said this time and time again, the knowledge of Allah is not just mere knowledge, because that has no physical effect. When he says he knows, it means it's a threat to the mufsid and it's a glad tiding to the muslih. He says, وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ, if Allah had willed, لَأَعْنَتَكُمْ, He would have put you in anat, which means mashaqqa, difficulty. This means to say He could have made the rules stringent and difficult to bear. But He did not do that. He made the rules of this deen flexible, just like in this ayah about mixing your wealth with the wealth of the orphan. Indeed, Allah is Aziz and Hakim. We have spoken about these words before, and these are two names of Allah. And like we said before, these names are normally given as a threat, as opposed to the names Ghafur Rahim. Okay, so let's reflect on these two ayat. We may take from this ayah the repeated lesson that the Sahaba are eager for knowledge in order to act on it. That's why they ask about certain matters. In fact, just in these two ayat alone, we have them asking about khamr, maisir, nafaqah, and yatama. 4 things. We learn that even in these sinful matters like khamr and maisir, there is benefit. But it is not about the benefit. It is about which one weighs more, the harms or the benefit. And this is what determines that which is sinful or not. Anything in the deen which is sinful is more harmful than beneficial. We learn something about giving in charity. You give in charity from the excess wealth that you have, because your priority is to spend on yourself and your dependents. This is the case for normal charity. As for zakah, we have a separate situation where if you have the nisab for 1 year, then you must give the appropriate fraction from your wealth. Only in a case of necessity, where if in giving the zakah you will become poor yourself, would you give your zakah from the excess wealth that you have. Otherwise, it's a simple case of the appropriate fraction from your wealth if it has reached the nisab for 1 lunar year. We take that Allah Jalla wa Ala makes plain to us His ayat, be it kawniyah or shar'iyah, so that we may act upon it and reflect about this world and about the hereafter as well. If we do not reflect about both lives, then we will become just like the kuffar who are chasing after this world, and they cannot imagine there being anything else beyond the materialistic facade of this life. And that truly is a sorry state of affairs. We learn from this ayah how to deal with the orphan. He says islah, deal with them in the way that is better. Now you will notice that the details of what constitutes al-islah is not given. Why not? Because this differs from time to time and place to place and culture to culture. So Allah Jalla wa Ala is leaving it down to our sensible judgment, which is why the person who is in charge of the orphan needs to have sensible judgment. It cannot just be anybody. And this is the case, we may say, not just with orphans, but with anyone who is under your care. You work in accordance with al-islah. We also find that Allah gives the threat to the mufsid, and He gives glad tidings to the muslih. We also take that Allah has a mashi'ah, He has a will, and He does things in accordance with His will. And we find from this ayah every reason to be thankful. If He wanted, He could have made this deen a lot more difficult for us. So anyone who complains that this deen is difficult should really read this ayah and ponder over it. It could have been so much more difficult. So be grateful. And we take the two names of Allah, Aziz and Hakim. We have spoken about this before. Wallahu a'lam.